normally it stays on.
Yeah,
Select the scene.
I'm a button one on.
You're on now. You're on now. I'm not.
Seeing no further lights.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to extend an agreement with Gail M. Goldman Associates for public art consultant services and the creation of a public art master for a 6-month term.
All right, seeing no lights, B, please.
A resolution authorizing the city treasurer to renew blanket purchase order number 542380 with Enco Utility Services for a 1-year renewal period with 2 optional 1-year renewal periods remaining for the purpose of utility billing data quality control and other support in the amount of $120,000.
E, please.
A resolution approving payment to Arthur J. Gallagher Risk Management Service, LLC, for renewal of property insurance, difference in conditions, flood and quake insurance, fine arts floater insurance, and terrorism insurance for 2019 for an annual premium amount of $396,567.10.
G, please.
A resolution authorizing the purchasing agent for the City of Chattanooga to enter into an agreement to join the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance National Government Purchasing Cooperative, which will allow the City of Chattanooga to utilize contracts that have been negotiated through cooperative.
All right, still no lights. Thank you, Madam Clerk. That is, oh, excuse me, Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. We kind of covered on this one briefly, but can we get a little bit more detail on this and the benefits to the city?
Good afternoon.
Hi, Bonnie.
Afternoon.
Hi. What we are bringing before you tonight is similar to the other cooperative contracts that we use, such as Sourcewell, previously known as the National Joint Powers Alliance. And basically what they are contracts that are bid by other government entities and consolidated. They're vetted and consolidated by an organization, typically a nonprofit, that makes sure that they are translatable enough for nationwide usage. And that is what this organization does, similar to Sourcewell.
Okay, Bonnie, my one question that I think probably all of us have up here is, does this in any way hinder our ability or I call it our duty, to do business locally?
No, absolutely not. In fact, when we use a cooperative contract, we look at it with the same amount of detail as we would when we are coming from the frame of mind of developing a bid, or we compare it with factors such as what the breadth of the contract coverage is, the size of the contract, and so basically we look at it with the same frame of mind and analysis as we would if we were comparing bids that come in straight to us.
So goods and services that are provided on Main Street, Chattanooga, Tennessee, are not competing against a super Costco, so to speak, and they will never be able to compete. So that's not happening with this.
No, typically these we typically use cooperatives for large scale need, or those that are specific to a certain type of provider. But the vast majority of the time it's for I'll refer to the wastewater treatment plant. We use cooperatives quite frequently for what they need, which is pretty specific. And a cooperative like this saves us time. In this instance, we foresee using this cooperative for technology contracts, which are also typically rather large.
Okay. Last question, thank you, Chairman, is would you be able, in like say 1 year time frame with this going into effect, be able to kind of give us a synopsis of where this was applied so we could kind of wrap our heads around and see it, just so we can make sure. Because, I mean, the last thing I would ever want to do is create a hurdle for a local business in our city to do business with the city.
Yes, of course.
Sure.
And in fact, typically when we are using a cooperative, off the top of my head, it is typically an item that comes before this body to approve one way
Right.
or the other.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Of course.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker.
Sure.
Anything further? All right, seeing none, we're going to move into our Public Works and Transportation Committee. We do have a departmental report by Public Works. We'll just go ahead and handle that in committee. Councilman, if you're good with that. All right, Chairman Mitchell.
For the departmental report, can I get approval of the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Thank you. We're going to have a Public Works Department report. Love to do that to you, Mr. Bailey, when you're standing up like that. Yeah, he just stood up like thought he was going to come up here and talk.
Give me that. Should be another couple of slides. So we'll cue our slides there. It's got some interesting statistics. I didn't want to bore you with all of the statistics by reading them, so you're going to get to see them, and then we'll be able to provide this slide deck to you if you would like. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for the opportunity to report. Annually, we generally talk about a report to the council, just talking about our successes that we've seen this last year. We also bring to you annually a report on the progress of our consent decree. Public Works manages really several complex operations where the roles and responsibilities are significant to promoting the quality of life that our residents want to live in our city. Public Works manages the city's stormwater systems. This improves water quality and ensures that we remain in compliance with our environmental mandates. In 2018, we accomplished a lot by a lot of work cleaning and upgrading that system. We also spent a lot of time educating the public about the stormwater and wastewater systems in our city. An impressive project that the water quality team completed this past year, very recently, in fact, was this educational bus wrap that you may have seen around the city that our very own Catherine Vogel conceptualized. And Catherine is the third person from the left. She is part of our water quality team. And with this message, only rain down the drain, we've seen some interesting statistics from our business partners at 311. Compared to 3 months prior to this bus wrap unveiling, 311 requests for dumping of roadside tires, litter, and illegal dumpings have increased 95, 52, and 43% respectively since the bus wrap went into commission just 2 months ago. As you all know, the Department of Public Works operates the regional wastewater treatment plant at Ondemand, the interceptor sewer systems throughout the city, as well as managing relationships with 8 of our regional wastewater customers to provide sewer services. Clear Chattanooga has been an instrumental educational piece that we've used to engage positively with our residents about the importance of this type of infrastructure and what it means to the availability of jobs, clean water, resources, and recreation and public health. One of the most notable statistics from this slide is the 1,970,427 linear feet of pipe that we've maintained. It translates to about 370 miles of sewer pipes through the year. The Department of Public Works operates and maintains all of our city's public parks and public spaces. Parks has a wonderful parks engagement program, public engagement program called the Park Stewards. It's a group of volunteers that are really invaluable assets to our Parks Division. Some of them are kind of full-time members, and then we have volunteer opportunities throughout the year from other agencies. They provide time and talent and resources to help promote the health of our parks throughout our park system. Recently, during yesterday's MLK Day of Service, we had a couple of parks projects in local parks that the Park Stewards and some volunteer groups took advantage of. Our department is most widely known probably for our city's solid waste and recycling services. I always say that, you know, the garbage truck and recycle truck is something that touches each household probably weekly. Public Works touches everyone every day in some aspect. And so but the solid waste and recycling trucks are something that people like to see coming through their neighborhood. They like to see fire and police cars, obviously, but you don't always want to need one. But you always will need garbage collection, so we're thankful to be able to provide that service to you. We talk a lot about recycle collection in 2018. You'll continue to hear about successes in 2019, our commitment to increase curbside recycling in Chattanooga, so stay tuned for more information about it. We are actually thrilled to have added over 2,600 new curbside recycling customers in 2018. Our customer base is now up to 30,807. This year we increased curbside recycling by about 9%. We're really thrilled to have been able to manage some of those projects, and we continue to work with our downtown partners and outside partners to increase curbside recycling and education of waste diversion. Recently, the Department of Public Works began managing the city's fleet. This year, we've implemented a new system for managing our fleet, and we've been working with our partners in police and fire and other departments to help manage their fleets as well. And we're excited about the successes that our leadership our new leadership there, longtime city employees Gary Franks and Charlotte Hicks have shown to ensure the success of those new programs. We're also tasked with the maintenance and repairs to streets and sidewalks and managing the city's roadside trees and urban forest canopy. Many of the statistics related to our work, our great working relationship with the city's 311 department, and as a lot of you know, the Department of Public Works receives a majority of those requests. More than 90% of the requests reported to 311 are completed by Public Works employees. The Department of Public Works leads the planning, design, maintenance, and management and inspection of construction projects throughout the city. In 2018, we were able to complete several major projects, including upgrades by way of new roofs, pavilions, and playgrounds to youth and family development centers, several new park upgrades, and new parks as well. Our engineering division project managers, led by Bill and Dennis Malone and group, which a lot of you get a chance to interact with often, they've managed a total of 142 projects this year, and contracts totaling over $242,808,000. Pretty impressive number. And our dedicated staff in every operation are excited to serve Chattanooga and serve this council body and the mayor, and we look forward to a great new year in 2019. I appreciate your time and have time for questions if council or if the chairman will allow us.
Well, sure. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Justin, I really don't have a question, just a compliment, really. I mean, I can say of all the times I call Public Works, y'all are very responsive and do a great job anytime I call. And I've had a lot of compliments, even from constituents, talk about what a good job that Public Works employees do when they come out and service, you know, their lot or residents or whatever it is. But y'all do a great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. We've got several of our staff here. Just raise your hand. I think we've got several Public Works employees here represented, and they're great work. I appreciate the compliment.
Thank you, Councilman. Let's see here. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Echo Councilman Henderson, a big shout out to everybody because I know Davidson Road has needed some attention recently, and as it was brought to my attention by many of my constituents, the message is relayed, and I know your crews are out there as fast as possible. And out of that 7,844 potholes, I think 844 are on Davidson. So I appreciate that very much. I appreciate your attention and thinking about the needs at Jack Benson Heritage Park as well. But I do appreciate the responsiveness. And I know 311 is the preferred way for things to come through and communication-wise. I know that still has I think some trouble with some of our constituents using it. And I think we could probably work on that a little bit. But I tell you, when we call you, you're there, and we appreciate it. And across the city, and especially in District 4, we thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Those constituents have the app? Ah, okay.
I didn't want to get in there, Chairman.
Yeah, we better move on.
Yeah.
Feels like a shovel coming to dig a hole. Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. First, I just want to thank the staff and everyone for the amazing job you guys do. I hear a lot of great reports, especially when people are calling in at 311, the courtesy and the niceness that goes on when people call. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Justin, if it's possible, some people just don't have a clue of all the work that goes on. So is it possible, can I get an email of this report?
Yes, sir. We will do that shortly after this. After we leave here, we'll
Thank you so
be sure
much.
to send it to Nicole.
Thank you.
And others. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. I just have one question. Did I hear 90% of 311s are fulfilled by Public Works?
That's correct.
Huh. Okay. Mr. Bailey, do you mind if we just stick with Public Works and go through those first? Okay, thank you.
I had a joke about construction, but we're still working on it.
Working on the joke?
It's a bit of a riddle joke.
Okay, you can go on with your report.
No?
Going to sleep, okay?
Okay. All right, we're going to move into this week and next week's agenda on Public Works. I guess I need to move. I think we're starting, is it a resolution?
Yes, sir.
January 22nd, 7F.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number W17004201 to Reeves Young LLC of Sugar Hill, Georgia, for Chattanooga Wet Weather Combined Sewer Storage Phase 1, a consent decree project in the amount of $46,569,100 with a contingency amount of $2 million for an amount not to exceed $48,569,100, subject to SRF loan approval.
I see where this was deferred a couple of weeks ago, and I have a question from Councilman Henderson.
Well, if I may, Mr. Henderson, before the question, we're going to ask to defer this item. It was originally showed up on January 8th, and we're going to ask to defer this item another 2 weeks. We still have a purchasing question in the attorney's office and in purchasing to resolve. I would ask that we do that before questions.
You still have a question?
No, that was my question, if they were ready to go.
All right.
Apparently not. So you want another 2 weeks?
Yes, sir, please.
5th, February 5th.
February 5th.
All right, well, let's move on. We're moving into next week, Tuesday, January 29th, resolutions. Please read 7J.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 2 final for CTI Engineers, Inc., relative to contract number W15001101, MBWWTP, Detroiters Rehabilitation, a consent decree project, support project for a decreased amount of $3,271.64 for a revised contract amount of $424,728.36.
Seeing no questions, you are the keeper of the wastewater treatment plant. Are you okay with this one?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. 7K, please.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number E16006201 to Wright Brothers Construction Company, Inc. of Charleston, Tennessee, Lupton Mills Site Remediation in the amount of $1,676,744 with a contingency amount of $150,000 for an amount not to exceed $1,826,744.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this is in your district, but I've been watching this one with much curiosity and hopefulness. So I would like to get a little more update on this. And
Sure. So this is to make it a green field on that Lupton City site that's currently muddled with rubble throughout the site that was left. to the city, county, in a land transaction. Our plan is to, within approximately within the next 60 days, to begin remediation using the proposed contractor. The construction of the site would take about 8 months, so we'd look to the end of the year for completion.
So, forgive me, Chairman. So if the wet weather continues, that's going to be a major delay, obviously?
Well, it's a dirt project. We're actually entering some drier weather after March and into April, so the summer weather gives us a chance to get a good start on the construction. But obviously, weather is a challenge anytime you're dealing with a dirt project,
Sure.
this is 100% a dirt project.
So
Just
60 days, we
grading
should
this.
start seeing some action.
That's correct, sir.
Very good. That's what I was going for.
After the
you
notice
now.
to proceed.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Councilman Smith.
Thank you, sir. Justin, at the conclusion of this project, what will we have?
Well, let me yield to Bill Payne or Dennis to explain exactly what the remediation of the site looks like. So it will end up looking like a green field. Besides, at the end of the project, once it's a cap of a project, it's a capped project where we're actually rubblizing some of the material and then filling over it with an earth cap.
Okay.
I'll ask Bill to explain a little bit more in detail, or if you have questions related to the project.
Don't you hate it when he does this to you, Bill?
That's okay, what he said. But yeah, so we would be consolidating all of there is some contaminated debris that's left over, treated timbers, that would be consolidated into a couple of areas that are there on the site, and then they would be capped. TDEC requires an 18-inch soil cap in order to go on the top of that. So there could be some other amenities, some sort of pavilions or other things like that could be built, but there would have to be some things we'd have to address with those if we look to build those in the future. But those could be built. Something like public restrooms or pavilions are contemplated as well. So those are some things that could be done on those portions of the site. But it would consolidate all that into a single location, or into 2 locations on the site.
So how big is the property? How many acres?
Roughly 11.
We're around 11. So this will be just an 11-acre open space based on this part of the project.
Yes.
Owned by, maintained by the city. So are we declaring this a city park, or is this just a piece of property that will be remediated to this degree and potentially open for sale or development in the future?
Good question. So we are working with administration, open spaces, parks maintenance to look at the future of the site. So as would be right after we finish the project, it will be a green field that we will maintain. So in essence, it will look like a park space without a formal designation currently. And I think the plan is to work through what the designation for that property would be and what the permanent uses of the property would be after or during the construction.
Okay, so if the desire is to develop on this property at some point in the future, would the work that we're doing now be beneficial, or will the work that we're doing now end up having to be completely replaced to properly mediate for development?
Again, let me let Bill more accurately answer that, but it is a permanent fix in that we are capping the site. And Bill's been working with TDEC to define what the permanent restrictions on the property will be.
And so this is a permanent remediation to what is actually contained on the site. Now there are, depending on what that permanent land use is, somebody could come along later. There would be some land use restrictions that would have to be placed on it in order for it to be. Some of that could be on only portions of the site. Some of it may be across the entire site. The state was looking at this property for some other types of contamination beyond what we're cleaning up prior to the city's ownership and the work that we're doing. And so to what extent all of those restrictions are going to add up to how that can be developed are some things that obviously the state will have to look at in terms of what that is. Now, it's always possible to spend more money and completely remove the contamination, which would then not have any restrictions. Certainly, if somebody wanted to say in the future, we don't want any restrictions on the property, so let's remove this debris from the site, those things certainly cost more money, and that would not be, certainly would be something beyond what this current scope is. This current scope is acceptable to TDEC in terms of a permanent remediation of the site because it eliminates the exposure to these materials on the surface, and it places them below ground in a way that is acceptable to the state in terms of capping them and preventing that exposure. So there are many other sites that the city, many of which the city still owns, others that the city has been involved with, where taking the material and placing it beneath a soil cap of approximately 18 inches is acceptable, and the state considers no further action is necessary. That's what we intend to do with this contract.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you get the answer you were looking for?
Nope.
Didn't think so. But you're finished?
I am.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions, but I have a question. Not to get our cousins up on the hill angry or anything, but this remediation is being paid for entirely by the city, right?
That's correct, sir.
And does the county have any plans to turn part ownership over to the city? Oh, wow. Got her up. Cool.
Usually when somebody's get mad, that means I have to come up here. So a couple of things. One, I'll just go back to a previous question. Our priority from the very beginning has been to get this site remediated. Questions about what happens to it after that's done we're open to them, but we can't delay action now because of future use. So I just want to say that our priority has always been to get it clean and get it safe. And then from there, we can have conversations about future development. Excuse me, I've been a little under the weather. As to the county's interest, they plan to turn over all ownership in the property to us. That commitment's been made. It's just a matter of paperwork.
And who at the city is responsible for making sure that actually happens?
Me.
Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions. Everybody okay? Thank you. Sorry to get you up when you're not feeling well. Looks like we're moving to 7L.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1 for JDH Company, Inc. of Chattanooga, Tennessee, relative to contract number Y17015201, replacement roofing system for East Chattanooga YFD Center Building for an increased amount of $67,555 with a contingency amount of $17,500 for a revised contract amount of $242,907 for an amount not to exceed $260,407.
All right. M, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Enco Utility Services for sewer billing services for a 1-year term with 2 optional 1-year renewals for a cost of $1.20 per bill per month, plus setup, licensing, and incidentals, shut-off notice printing, call center services, etc., for a total amount not to exceed $1.2 million.
Don't see any questions. Oh, you do? Okay. Councilperson Burrs.
Talk about this. It's costing us $1.2 million to do what?
These are the bills that are sent from the wastewater treatment plant that operates as a utility. So we invoice each customer each month. Everyone receives a bill. This was part of, if you recall, after Tennessee American Water made a corporate decision to not to bill sewer customers nationwide, the city began to take on this service for Tennessee American customers.
Sure, I was just wondering, that comes out of Public Works instead of the city treasurer?
That's correct. It comes out of the wastewater utility
It
fund.
Yeah,
So it's a fee for service.
okay. And it has nothing to do with the fees that we've been arguing about raising? That's a whole different thing, right?
This isn't the stormwater fee that we've discussed more recently. No, ma'am. This is part of the wastewater utility in Moxon Bend.
Sure, I mean, this has nothing to do with that as well, right? Okay,
No, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right. Is that all you have for us this evening?
That's it, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Good report, too.
Thank you.
You know, Justin, just very quickly, we're going through a process as a council, and I'm going to need to get with you in a meeting to talk about outcomes on some of the council's goals that we have set for ourselves. And so within the next 2 weeks, I'd like to have a meeting with you, hopefully sooner rather than later, if that's okay.
Fantastic.
All right, thank you.
At your availability.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, it's time. Hey, Mr. Bailey, how you doing?
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Looks like we will start, it doesn't say, but I'm assuming this is this week, the 22nd. All right, so we got some ordinances on final reading. Do we need to go over those, or are everybody okay with those? All right, so we can move to the 29th, next week. All right, and resolutions, 7N, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Transportation to enter into a partnership agreement with Murphy BSSL LLC, project number T19004804, for the Broad and 17th Street lofts located at 1701 Broad Street, and to accept a contribution towards the cost of 9 pedestrian light poles, luminaries, conduits, and installations in the amount of $22,767.57.
Okay. I believe that's going to do it, but I'd like to ask one question just a second. Mr. Attorney?
Yes.
I believe on this final reading on 5G, I believe we found last week that Transportation changed their denial recommendation to approve, didn't they? Am I mistaken there?
We did verbally, but I don't know that we sent that in written form to the city attorney, which we're happy to do if that's necessary. What was
Or are
that?
we okay with it? No, that's just a recommendation. That's not, is the council okay just going the way it is? So, okay, we're okay. We're okay with that. We'll work. We'll make it look like we're arguing with their interpretation. That always looks good. Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir.
I don't see anything else. Do we have anything else in Public Works and Transportation before we move on? If not, we'll move on to Human Resources. And Chairman Gilbert.
Can I get a move approval? Second. Thank you. Ms. Belva, do you want to go ahead and start with the resolutions first and then go with the other?
Sure, that'll be fine.
Madam Chair, can you read the resolution first?
A resolution authorizing the appointment of Zachary Phillips as a special police officer unarmed for the McCamey Animal Center to do special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
I don't see any questions. Keep going.
A resolution authorizing the Chief Human Resource Officer to enter into a contract agreement with Race Forward Government Alliance on Race and Equity for consultant services, training, and a racial equity action plan for Chattanooga city government for a contract term for 1 year in the amount of $88,000.
I have, Chair Pennell has a question.
I do. Select next, hit next, up here, there you go. Thank you. Aren't we still conducting a disparity study, in the process of a disparity study, or no?
I believe that we are, yes, but it's different from this particular study.
And how would it be different, or, I guess my question is, why would we not wait on the disparities study before we enter into this?
She answered your question.
So, Councilman, while they are complementary projects, they're different. The Government Alliance on Racial Equity training is really sort of a foundational training for all city employees about issues of race and equity. The disparity study is about how much city resources are spent on contracts with minority vendors relative to how many minority vendors are available in each one of those industries. So I think of them as complementary projects, both of which have a lot of merit, but don't necessarily rely on each other they can be executed simultaneously.
So this then is more, well, I don't want to say more, but inclusive in training. Will it be through all departments, through all?
I'll let you take back over.
Wait
Yes.
for a minute. I'm sorry. Can we let her go a presentation with the questions you asked? She might can go ahead and
Have
answer
you got
it.
a presentation?
Yes,
do, yes.
we're gonna do a presentation of this.
Okay.
So can we wait till then? Sure. I appreciate it.
All right.
Madam Chair, I think it's one more for next week.
A resolution authorizing the Chief Human Resource Officer to extend an agreement with Cornerstone Ondemand for the learning management system with an option to renew for one additional year for an annual amount of $35,900.
I believe these are old ones, right? There's no question on that. So, Ms. Beverly, go ahead and give us a presentation. So hopefully you can answer some of the questions that my colleagues have.
Okay, thank you. Well, in regards to GEAR, within the next 10 minutes, what I'd like to do is give you an overview about what GEAR is, how does it affect Chattanooga, and also be able to answer any questions that you may have. So to the question of what is GEAR, GEAR actually is an acronym that stands for the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. It is actually a corporate project or a project that is a collaboration between the Social Inclusion Society or Center for Social Inclusion and the Haas Institute. And GEAR, the organization, actually works with governmental jurisdictions just like Chattanooga to help embed race equity into local government practices. I have a video that will go a little bit deeper that I think would help gauge everyone's understanding.
A social movement that only moves people is nearly a revolt. A movement that changes both people and institutions is a revolution.
The Government Alliance on Race and Equity is a national network of local government working to advance racial equity and lift up outcomes for everyone.
GEAR is helping people to understand that the government had a role in creating racial inequity and creating racial disparities.
We have to normalize conversations about race. That means that we have commonly held definitions, that we're working from a shared framework and a shared understanding.
My observation and experience was that we had to move beyond the conversations about diversity and inclusion and really talk about racism and structural racism and systemic racism, how that contributed and how it continues to contribute to the disparities that we see in our community.
Looking at redlining, looking at urban renewal, and normalizing that dialogue so that there's a much more broad understanding about the root causes of disparity in communities of color and how we have an opportunity to do something about that.
The city of St. Paul set a goal for all employees to go through our racial equity foundations training by the end of 2017, and we were able to achieve that goal.
We've been working at this for a long time in the city, taking them through a series, Race, the Power of an Illusion, so people can understand why we were even coming at this work.
We have trained over 5,000 employees. Through that, the conversation around race became normalized.
Operationalizing racial equity means that we're not just talking about theory, that we're actually creating change. We're taking ideas and putting them into practice using a racial equity tool and developing racial equity action plans.
We were able to put in place a racial equity toolkit. Through that, we were able to work with other government agencies in the city of Portland to start talking about the outcomes that we want to see in the services that we provide.
One of the most exciting things that the SFPUC is working on to advance racial equity is really this place-based investment in Bayview Hunters Point, in which we have our Southeast Treatment Plant, where we treat 80% of the city's sewage. It is a huge opportunity to really deeply invest in a historic African-American neighborhood.
Creating a space where if you're working for the city of St. Paul, that means you're looking at everything from an equity lens, and that you're going to put together an action plan, and that your supervisor is going to hold you accountable for achieving those goals.
We finally got a workforce equity strategic plan that has been resourced by council and the mayor. One of the things that we did in order to get that plan in place was to go out and have focus groups with our employees. We are creating an entire program of training and workshop type deals so that all 2,500 managers and supervisors in the city will be required to go through this.
Organizing means that within the institution, we're building skills. We're building capacity to actually transform the organization.
What I'm most excited about happening is a true community engagement. I'd like to see a full integration of all of these entities coming together under the infrastructure that GARE provides.
If we are to get to the kind of democratic, just society we want, it's only going to happen locally with local government. And it will be the accumulation of all that work that finally actually shows us as a nation how we lead.
All right. Thank you for indulging me there. I hope that the video at least added a little bit more clarity to what the organization is. So for Chattanooga, when we think about GARE and bringing this initiative, this diversity and inclusion initiative to our forefront, one of the questions that comes to mind is how will they help us? And so what we'll be doing with, of course, your approval of the resolution that we put forth is the organization will come to visit Chattanooga for what I will call an introductory meeting. And of course, during that time, we'll have more face-to-face discussions about what the organization will help assist us in. You all will also have an opportunity to engage with them as well. But for the main points of what GARE will do for Chattanooga or help us to do, they'll work with Mayor Burks and administration, and basically what they will do is help us to be able to address where we have some, I'll say, racial inequities and how we can move forward with putting together a core team of individuals that would be across not only city government but also within the community to help us begin to start our journey on this pathway. They'll also provide training for all of our employees here within city government. Secondly, there will be a survey where we'll collectively we'll be talking with individuals across the city of Chattanooga just to, I will say, get a baseline of where people are at in terms of their understanding about why racial equity is so important for us as a city. In addition to that, when we think about the leadership here in city government, whether that is department heads, middle managers, or staff leaders, or whomever, basically the organization will help us and also provide training for those individuals as well so that we can become comfortable with how to talk about race, also to increase our aptitude and skill levels so that we know how to approach building the, I'll say, the equity, the racial equity components, or using those lens so that we can embed those within every operations across the city. Fourth, there would also be a train-to-trainer process where we'll have a key group of individuals that will be immersed in this work in understanding how to help the city, and they will actually help to deploy some of the training so that this is not a one-time event, that we can keep it moving forward. And then finally, they'll help us with assisting us with developing those action plans. So why is this important to Chattanooga? Well, every Chattanooga citizen, irregardless of their race, their color, their creed, ethnic background, deserves to live the life free of the barriers that are either preventing them from aspects such as racial bias and systematic inequities. So that's all I have for you this afternoon, and I'll definitely welcome any questions that I can answer for you.
Well, I cut Chip off, so I'm going to ask him, do you have any more questions, sir?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Next is Councilwoman Byrd.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, I think racial equity is very important, and it's probably not the overt, but the covert inequities that really matter. I guess my question is, to follow up on the councilman's question, do we have inequity now?
Did you say, do we have inequities?
Yeah.
We definitely have some opportunities across the city.
Do we have
Absolutely.
any inequities now?
Yes, we do. So let me elaborate on that. So when I think about policies and procedures, and even if I look at where we have, what's the makeup of various departments across government, yes, we have an inequity in leadership. We definitely have a diverse workforce, but when we look at how diverse we are perhaps in leadership within several certain departments, we have opportunities there. And there's probably other inequities, but through this process, we'll figure those out.
And so will this also be addressing the more subtle aspects of attitudes, what I call the covert racism that happens in departments? A lot of our departments are headed by people of color. What I'm saying is, if we look at certain departments, they may be heavily one race, but there's an economic disparity there.
Absolutely.
So, are we looking at all of that?
We will be. So I'll address the question this way. So if the question is, why start with race? Well, when I think about it from that perspective, race actually is a catalyst across all diversity. So it intersects with, whether we're talking about gender, whether we're talking about age, and it also, when we start thinking about the factors that identify success, whether that's from housing to jobs to whatever the other opportunities are, race plays a part in all of those and cuts across all of those lines. So as we dig in and we start addressing the racial inequity, all of the other areas of diversity are affected as well in a positive way.
If I may, all I was simply asking is, do we have disparity now? Do we have the study that shows disparity now, rather relative to race, relative to economics, leadership, that sort of thing? Do we have the data now?
We don't have the full data. There is data that we have that we can look at, but a part of us getting to how we drive the improvement is recognizing all of the other areas. So when I think about maybe policies or practices, while well-intended, they could cause disparity without us knowing it, unintended disparity. So this study will help us to figure that out.
The covert stuff.
Yes.
And can we hope at some point to look at gender and age as well? Because they're not separate.
No, they're not. And what I was sharing earlier, when we think about race is not separate from age or gender. So while we're looking at race, we will also be looking at whether that's how does race play out relative to age, how does it play out relative to gender as well.
Thank you.
Next is Mr. Councilman Jerry Mitchell.
I'm sorry.
You had your.
Did you just say me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You were dreaming.
No, I wasn't dreaming. I'm trying to figure this out. Trying to put myself in a mind where I can kind of understand it.
Okay.
I see this, every Chattanooga citizen, irrespective of race, color, and ethnic background, deserves to live a life free of the barriers caused. Great quote, great quote. The video, great quotes in the video and everything, but so many times they were going to something that's bigger to me than the city of Chattanooga. And so when I get in my mind and I say we're going to spend $88,000 for a training program that makes the city, more equitable, I'm like, okay, sounds like a good investment. But when you're throwing at me this every Chattanooga citizen and in the video, we're going to eliminate redlining, and I'm just going, how do we go? And maybe I'm getting too focused on that versus the purpose of this. Okay. But how we go from here to there?
Well, first, thinking about the city of Chattanooga and the government, the city of Chattanooga, the government of Chattanooga affects so many other areas throughout the entire city and the citizens and other agencies. And so this effort is not going to be singly focused. What this will include and will require is that we have partnerships with other community agencies around the city, whether that's faith-based, whether that's working with, I'll say our brothers and sisters in Hamilton County or anywhere else. Bottom line is, this can't be just city government doing this. It's going to take, basically, it is going to take a village. And so when we start, if city government employs policies that affect not only those internal to the four walls of city government, these are things that are going to affect our citizens as well as agencies or people that do business with the city of Chattanooga also. So in order for us to start down this path, the Chattanooga government is just taking the lead to be able to start somewhere in our own house. And in doing so, we'll be reaching out to other community members or agencies to help support the same effort, because there's other agencies, other businesses as well around Chattanooga that wants the same thing. And so collectively, we will work together under one plan.
Can I ask one more? Okay, we're doing this, and you mentioned other agencies joining in, and I don't know if you've had any buy-in yet from anybody, but are we going to require EPB? Are we going to require CARTA? Are we going to require any of the agencies that basically revolve around us to do this also, or are we just going to ask?
There's going, well, to those specifics. We have put together, I'll call it a draft list of potential partners on this initial rollout. And so we will be inviting them, because they have also expressed an interest, we'll be inviting them to be a part of this. And so depending on what that response is, but yes, we will be reaching out.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, sir. Next is Councilman Leffert.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of along the same lines as some of the questions before I had. Number one, training will be for everyone in the city of Chattanooga.
Yes.
As far as the employee, fire department, police department.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Everyone.
Yes.
Okay, city council?
Yes.
Okay.
Will be, yes.
Okay, very good, very good. And at the end of the program, what are the steps in the visible, measurable outcome? What should we expect to see?
Well, that may be a little bit premature for me to answer, because collectively, when I say collective, the core body, rather city councils and other members that are part of this, we will collectively work on the action plan and develop what those actionable measures are. Because depending on what we find, let's say we do an assessment, it would be premature right now to say, I'm making this up, but let's just assume that we had an opportunity from a racial gender perspective, just using this as an example. My point is, we may start to deploy action steps and found out later that that's not the problem that we have in Chattanooga. So we need to at least collect the information, do the assessment, and from there determine what areas are going to be the high priority areas for us to address first, and develop measures around those.
Okay. Still, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm a little fuzzy on still the relationship between this, and Councilman Henderson kind of hit on it, and with the disparity study too. I'm a little fuzzy on how these two, I guess, intermingle. I guess they're separate, but it
They
feels
are.
like they cross over at some point. Or-
I believe that they do from, I'll say from maybe a global perspective, but where they're different at. So the current disparity study that was referenced, again, that is dealing with more so in terms of small businesses or our purchasing, I'll say platform. This particular initiative is really dealing with how do we start working with the individual, how do we start working with the people that either one, benefit or affected by policies and actions that we have here in government, and how we begin to, what I'll say, build our capacity to be able to deal with it, to really make fundamental changes.
Sure. So I could go back to Dr. Burz's comment, I think, so when it comes to attitude. So I guess what we're kind of looking for out of this is development of better attitudes or more education or just better souls, if you will, and dealing with in everybody that the city touches.
Absolutely.
And with hopefully an infectious positive outcome. Is that what our measurable outcome possibly could be?
Yes, it could be, absolutely, and I think about, so my word for that is culture. So if we're building a culture that is inclusive, that indicates that there are certain behaviors that are acceptable and there are certain behaviors that will not be acceptable. And so it would be up to us to determine what that looks like for the city of Chattanooga and also identify how we're going to hold accountable to those things.
Okay. So it's kind of like a Chattanooga city is taking the improvement starts with me.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. Next is Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Okay, this was something that it kind of sparked my attention, and maybe it doesn't associate with this at all. When I talk to some employees, city employees, at times they say, "No, hey, Councilman, I've been here 20 years, and I know this department hands down." But then someone will come in and become my supervisor, then I have to train them on how to do the job, and this person is my supervisor now, and they know nothing about my job. And I'm sitting here training a person who's gonna be my boss, and they'll say, that's wrong. How can you help me get to that supervisor position? And so then it bothers me to the point when I look at what's going on and read, why is this important in Chattanooga? When I read that, how does any program, or how do we say, because wordplay is everything, the way you articulate, and a lot of us are very educated to be able to say things that won't make that person who feel like they're not moving up or who feel like they're training their supervisor. You can use wordplay to make it not look like it's race, to make it not look like it's color, to make it look like, hey, I'm not trying to hold you down. Maybe you just don't have managerial skills, but you have enough skills to train this person, or, so how do we get a study to help us fix things of that nature? And does this study or anything helps to balance that out?
Well, first of all, I think a study helps to identify, but what you're talking about is bias in the system or in the process.
Okay.
Now, there could be, obviously there could be bias or other inequities that may not necessarily be race-driven, but it may be a bias. And so to the example that you gave, what I would think about is through our process, because this is just one initiative on the race side, but we have to have a comprehensive platform around what we're going to do to build an inclusive environment for the city. So from that standpoint, that means that we have to look at policies and practices and making sure that we take out as much bias as we can that definitely has negative impact to individuals or to our workforce. And so that means through this process, we would be looking at, how we do business and with a different lens, because if we're looking at it and if it does cause a disparity for whatever reason, then that gives us opportunity to rethink it or to change it or whatever the case may be. But I think we would find that we would be in a much better place, because then we're working from a different platform that's more objective than a subjective of, I may be training my boss, as an example. There is a reason, or there could be plausible reasons, but of course there could be things that we need to improve upon through our practices and our policies.
Okay, because a lot of times, in talking to these people, the race comes up, you know, and a lot of time that perception becomes reality.
Absolutely.
It's because I'm black is why I'm now training this young Caucasian person to be my boss. And it's like, well, you know, I don't hope, you know, we don't want to use those practices and we don't want to say, yeah, that's true. And I just wonder, like, when people articulating themselves, they can write it up or present it to where, you know, I'm not doing it for this reason or I'm not doing it for that. And
Absolutely. So a part of an opportunity. So when I think about in my wheelhouse for HR, we have an opportunity to employ more training relative to hiring and interviewing, and also using a different approach to what I'm going to call interviewing panels and making sure that it's not just one voice, but a collective voice of those that have, one, an interest in that particular position or know something about it, so that it's not one-sided. And so we can do that a number of different ways, but that's an opportunity for us today. And so when we start doing that, as well as deploying training that helps other people strengthen, or people that are seeking employment, helping them to build their capacity or their skill sets for those particular roles, and helping them to understand really what is the key competencies that are going to be required for that, then we're on a different platform. But until we get those things in place, we may be subjected to, well, the system or the process is not fair. But through those things that I mentioned, that's how we're going to help to drive bias out of our process. Now, granted, we're realistic enough to know that we can't get bias out of everything to the nth degree, because all bias is not bad. But ones that cause negative impact on individuals or our organization, those are the ones that we should definitely be addressing.
thank you.
You through? Mr. Byrd, Council Byrd, are you through? Okay. Next on is Councilwoman Coonrod.
Councilwoman.
I said one.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I thought you said men.
No.
And I too, this quote that's up here is a great quote. However, the more that I look at it and think about the practices that we have here with our city government, the historical, the cultural, and to personal practices, that I'm just going to see it. And you're right, Councilwoman Burrs, that we do have African American that are in leadership positions over departments, and it's typically those departments that can have a great effect on African American individuals. So when you talk about economic development, we got an African American woman, you got workforce development, you got Sharita and Jermaine, you know, those things, youth and family development, that we can actually have a great impact in these marginalized, disadvantaged, impoverished communities. But due to our policies and funding that's dictated by the administration, it don't often get done in that way. And we talk about that we have a village, but when we have a village of these poor communities coming up here speaking out on what the things and the needs that they need for them to thrive, we overlook that village. That village becomes not important. But yet we have this great quote that says that it is important. And predominantly those communities are African American, and yet we say that the race doesn't matter. But when it comes to the paving of those streets, it matters at that time. When it comes for funding to put different things in the community, you know, to draw attention for investment to those community, race, it matters at that time. But that may be a conversation for something else. But I'm really concerned about something that was brought up about this disparity study, that we want to walk around and act like, okay, it's going to be cool because it's gonna be a great study to reveal the practices of the city or who we're contracting with for the minority. Well, we know the wordplay on minority, and we know exactly what that means. They're not speaking in reference of African American. So that's what it needs to say, because it can come back and we can do all kind of business with minority, which in turn can be the Caucasian woman. So what are the business? I'm interested more so, not the business that's been done by Caucasian women and you know, being business owners, but I would like to see the study reveal how many African American women business owners that's being contracted with the city of Chattanooga, and not just the low level contracts, and then also African American men, because the ones that I see that they come across are janitorial, those kind of things, catering, simple catering jobs, or that kind of stuff. But they're not getting a big contract, so that's another discussion that we might need to just tear the scab off of, because we can't keep having these studies but not truly addressing. And then when we look at the head, nothing against the administration, I love them all, but we only just had one person that was of African American that was housed up there, and that was James McKissick. Now he's no longer there. So is it an issue with why they're not appointing people to work with their immediate staff to work in their departments as well? So I mean, it makes sense, and I get it that they want their family and friends and the best of the best, but I can't help to think about, well, when will African American be selected to be amongst the best?
Well, we have a lot of very talented people of color on our floor. Councilwoman, I invite you to come up and meet them, but I just want to correct you that that's not true and very disrespectful to their work.
It's not disrespectful. No, it's not. Well, I said you only have one African American male that I've seen at your administration since I've been here, and that's James McKissick.
Hold it. Councilwoman Coonrod. Councilwoman Coonrod. We're not here to debate back and forth. We just said, Ms. Coonrod, she just said, if you want, go up there and see how many African Americans. I can say myself, out of all the administrations that I've been involved with, this is the first one that have hired that many minorities in the history, on the floor with them, in the history of the city of Chattanooga. But no, I'm not taking up for him. I'm just telling you, she offered you to go up there and see for yourself. Thank you. Mr. Henderson lowered his hand. Well, since I have any more questions, let me finish up this situation where one of the things that she did bring up that someone asked was council going to be part of it. And I asked that question too because I remember conversations that we have had in the past about different things, and some of our councilmen people don't understand, we don't start to understand each other, our culture and things of that nature. And they have good hearts, like Chip. He has a good heart. He has went out with other kids, African-American kids or black kids, to take them different places inside the United States. But some things he don't understand would be where we can't go to the banks and get the same loans that other people can get. So these are conversations that we're going to be having so we can both understand one another so we can push forward. So I'm looking forward to sitting down with my colleagues to discuss that. Okay. I don't have any more questions. So since we don't have any more questions, I think this is the last committee. We need to adjourn to 6.
Thank you. Thank you.
But it's true though, in the history. They think